Hello, sixth grade. We are moving on in the Odyssey. We are in chapter 6, and I am filming inside right now. It is super hot out. So I decided to bring you into my living room and one of my favorite spots on my couch. I've got my favorite snack, my favorite blanket, and just a really place I love to kind of just snuggle up and do my reading too. So we're going to move on to chapter 6, which is called Odysseus Continues His Tale. Now, last time we learned about the Cyclops, and we learned that the Cyclops had them trapped in the cave. The big boulder was blocking the exit, so they couldn't get out. The Cyclops just kept picking up some of Odysseus' men and eating them like snacks, and this made Odysseus super angry, rightfully so. They decided to escape by sharpening up a big stick, and they gave him a sleeping potion, and while he was sleeping, he stabbed him in the eye and blinded him. And he had asked what his name was, and Odysseus said, "No man." And so when the Cyclops' friends were yelling out, "Surely no man is killing you," and he's like, "Yes, no man is killing me," and it was kind of a play on words. And so in order to escape the cave, the men tied themselves to the bottom of the sheep. And so when the Cyclops opened the cave to let the sheep out, he felt the furry sheep and didn't know the men were hiding underneath. On his way out, and he was sailing away, Odysseus decides to say, "Hi, Odysseus is the one who blinded you." And unfortunately, Poseidon, who was the Cyclops' father, heard that Odysseus was the one who blinded him, and so now Poseidon is holding a grudge against Odysseus, and that's why he's making it so hard for him to get home, because Odysseus hurt his son. So we're going to move on to chapter 6 and listen to the rest of his tale. The magic bag of winds. The magic bag of winds. Soon we reached a peaceful island that floated on top of the sea. The island's elder, Aeolus, was a generous host. He let us rest, and he gave us food and water. I told him our sad tale of roaming the seas on our way back home, and he felt pity for us and wanted to help. Aeolus presented me with a magical sack made of leather. He told me that he had captured the roaring winds and tied them up in the sack. Zeus had made him the captain of the winds. He could stir or still each of them whenever he wanted. Before he gave me the sack, he tied it so tightly, not even a tiny puff of air could escape. He only allowed the fair west wind to blow. It was to take us home smoothly. Aeolus told me to keep it safe and near me at all time. I was not to tell my crew what was in the bag. I agreed, and we sailed on our way. We sailed for 10 days. I kept an eye on that bag of winds the whole time. It was exhausting, but I didn't want to take any chances. Soon we came so close to Ithaca that I could see the smoke rising from our own chimneys. I finally relaxed and closed my eyes for a minute. This was another mistake. As soon as I had begun to sleep, my men let their curiosity about the sack take over. One of them took it from my side. He thought it contained treasure that I was hiding from the crew. He tore open the sack, and the winds rushed out. This great mistake caused a terrible storm. The winds thrashed about, howling in our ears. They carried us, weeping terribly, back out to sea. All the way back, in fact, to the island where we had come from. Aeolus was shocked when we returned. "What happened? I took great pains to get you home." I told him my men and my cruel sleep had ruined me. I begged him to give us another bag of winds, but he refused. "Clearly you are cursed by the gods," he said. We moved on without his help. The goddess Circe. Next I will tell you about the goddess Circe. Now, this is quite a tale. Odysseus said. We finally arrived at another island and anchored nearby. My crew and I were terribly worn out. Our bodies and minds were tired. After getting a good night's sleep on the ship, I sent half of my men to shore. I asked them to come back and report what they saw. They found a small stone house. Fierce wolves and mountain lions prowled around the outside. But instead of attacking my men, the animals wagged their tails as if they were friendly little puppies. The creatures rubbed their noses lovingly against the sailors. It seemed that someone had tamed them with magic. When they knocked on the door of the goddess Circe, she welcomed the men. All trusted and followed her, all except for my first mate, who was leading the mission. He suspected trouble. He was right. Circe fed the men a great feast of cheese, honey, bread, olives, but she had dropped a sleeping potion onto the food. When my men became sleepy, she used her magic to turn them into pigs. Oink, oink. She locked them up in a pen and ignored their squealing. My first mate was the only one who didn't eat. He ran back to the ship to tell me what had happened. He was too afraid to return, so I went. As I'd entered the forest surrounding Circe's house, I met Hermes with his golden wand. He was in the form of a young man. He gave me a special herb, a black root with a white flower. If I ate the herb, it would protect me from Circe's spells. Hermes also told me how to respond when she tried to charm me. When she waves her magic wand at you, he said, draw your sword and spring forward. Pretend you're going to kill her. She'll be frightened, but she'll respect you. She will ask you to stay and be her companion. You must not refuse her, for if you want to set your men free, but you must not make her a promise that will not cause any. But you must make her promise that she will not cause any more trouble. And so I ate the herb and went to Circe's house. Odysseus continued. When I knocked on Circe's door, she let me in. She gave me a goblet of drink. I knew it was poisoned, but I drank it anyway. The herb would protect me. Then she waved her wand. She may have been trying to turn me into a pig too. I rushed at her with my sword. She screamed, fell to the ground and clasped my knees. Who and what are you? She asked, amazed. How can it be that my magic has no power over you? You are spell-proof. Surely you must be none other than the bold hero Odysseus. Hermes always said you would come here, and you and I would make a fine match. I demanded that she promise never to harm me or any of my men. At first she hesitated, because the gods must always keep their promises, but then she agreed. Circe brought my men into the room. They were still squealing, muddy pigs. The goddess walked among the pigs and dropped a magical potion on them, one by one. They turned back into my men. The men were even younger and better looking than they had been before. And then you left? King Alcinous asked Odysseus. Well, no, he admitted. Perhaps I was not as protected from Circe's magic as I thought. She charmed me. I stayed with her for a whole year. I forgot all about home until one of my men reminded me. And then I quickly remembered and made plans to leave Circe at once. And then you left for home? Queen Arete asked. No, Odysseus said. Circe told me I first had to go to Hades, the underworld where the dead lived. The way to get there was to sail the river Styx. There I was to make offerings to the gods. Also, I was to seek advice from the ghost of the blind prophet Tiresias. He would be able to help me to get home. Circe told me that he would not need a guide. We would only need to raise our mast, set our sails, and the north wind would blow us to the river Styx. This would take us to Hades. Of course, my men were upset and frightened. They did not want to go to Hades. It is where most men go only after they die. No mortal man should ever go there. All right, and that brings the end of our chapter. So, he ends up with, again, more trouble. He was almost home. He was right there, and his men just could not resist looking into the bag, and the winds blew them all the way back. How frustrating that must have been. And then they came to Circe, and Circe placed this magical spell on the men and turned them into pigs, and he ended up getting a magical spell placed on him and ended up staying there for a year, kind of underneath her spell. And he didn't even realize. He kind of forgot about home. And then the men were like, hey, we're going to go home already? So she said the only way for you to go home is that you have to go to Hades. And this is kind of like the afterworld where the dead goes. So in our next chapter, we will find out what happens when they go to Hades. All right, have a great day.